Emails from Afar, a chef's culinary adventure around the world. By Mike Sanders. Chapter 3. The Plan. Many years later, I was working my customary 2 jobs during the summer when a new neighbor moved in. I'd been working so hard that I hadn't taken much notice at first and let it go by. One sunny day, a few weeks later, we found ourselves outside our cabins getting to know each other. The 9 earrings in one ear and the 8 earrings in the other made me a little curious. Sarah had just moved all the way across the country from Cape Cod, where she was born and raised. We visited in the backyard, drinking beer and grilling food. She told me about her past trials, tribulations, and travels, and I did the same. By the end of the summer, we had grown quite close, spending what little free time we had together. We both had dreams of doing some serious traveling someday. Around Memorial Day, Sarah said that she'd been thinking of going back to Japan to visit a friend. In that moment, something inside me woke up. A spark. I suggested that maybe I'd tag along too. When it was time for Sarah to go home, I would continue on, wherever on may be. She then came back with, "Well, where would you go from there?" And, "I want to see that too." In about half an hour of talking back and forth, we had sketched out a route that would take us around the world through roughly 16 countries. On a shoestring budget, we would backpack from friend to friend, family member to family member, filling in the gaps along the way on our own. It sounded like a reasonable plan, well thought out and discussed. If we saved just 15% of each paycheck over the next 6 months, we could have $8,000 or so in the bank. With 2 credit cards for the big ticket items, we should be able to make it, but only if we did as little flying as possible. Airfare is always expensive. There's just no way around that. We would have to keep our flying to necessity level only. Steamships across the Orient, trains across Europe, and slow boats across the Arabian Sea. That was the plan. It sounded fantastic. It sounded romantic. It sounded like a dream come true. What it really sounded like was a complete and total pipe dream. Let me tell you something about being a chef. It's not a glamorous profession. Generally speaking, it's hard, thankless work behind a blistering hot stove. You become a chef because that's what you were born to do. It's in your blood. It's not because you want to become rich and famous. Of course, some chefs do make it all the way to the top and gain household name recognition, but that's a small sliver of the population. The bulk of us are doing a hard 60 to 70 hour work week for what breaks down to barely a living wage. The working conditions are difficult, demanding, and usually at least a little dangerous, if not completely outright death-defying. I live paycheck to paycheck just like 65% of the rest of America. "How in God's name can I travel the world when I can't even afford a cheeseburger?" was one of my favorite sayings. The idea that I could have enough money to travel the world was completely and utterly ridiculous. However, I do have to say, saving 15% of each paycheck not only got us to our goal, but exceeded it by almost $600. By working 2 jobs and getting as many hours as I could, I was able to save $8,580. I had to live like a pauper for close to 6 months to do it, but I knew it would pay off in the end. Besides, when you're working 80 hours a week, you don't have time or energy to spend any money. Really, the only 2 big expenditures before leaving was the $1,000 on the vaccinations for the 2 of us, and the $1,500 for the 2 seats to fly to Japan, and the minimal paperwork such as passports and visas. We also thought it'd be a good idea to give $500 to a close friend so he could pay the minimum monthly balance on the credit cards while we were gone. The vaccinations were kind of expensive, but I guess it boils down to I'd rather pay the money for the shot than pay for the hospital stay in a foreign country. Sarah also had the foresight to talk a friend into driving her car to her parents' house back on Cape Cod. We would need to cross the country somehow when we returned, and this was a great idea. We would pay for the one-way ticket out and the gas and the lodging for the drive back. With just a little convincing, we had her on board too. After a lot of deliberation, we concluded that our trip needed an objective, a mission statement for lack of better words. If we didn't come up with some sort of theme, we would end up wandering around aimlessly from tourist trap to tourist trap, never experiencing the flesh and bones of the local culture. Just showing up in a country isn't going to work. I put forth the idea that the trip shouldn't be about seeing Temple X or Mountain Y on a timetable, but just about trying to get all the way around the world. If we focused on the traveling route, the experiences would present themselves along the way. As the old saying goes, it's not the destination, but the journey that's important. With that in mind, I suggested our destination be home, We would leave, headed west towards Japan, and we would return from the east. The rest would work itself out. We did a little calculating on the calendar, factoring in moving of our stuff into storage, the end of our leases, cell phone contracts and the like. We came up with a date, November 17th, D-Day. The following are excerpts from the journal I kept of our daily adventures. Every day had some insane bus ride, cultural fascination, historical place, generous smile, or incredible food to write about. Most importantly, to me at least, along the way I collected over 20 authentic recipes that are included in this book. I found it very difficult to whittle my journal down to 40 or so stories. Honestly, the original version of this book was over 600 pages long. Every day was an adventure into the unknown and unexpected, and therefore of equal importance in my view. But nobody wants to read a 600-page book, starting with me, and I wrote the damn thing. This book is unlike other culinary travel books currently available in the sense that I don't want to tell you stories about the crazy things and the wild foods I experienced in places you'll never go. Food pornography, as I've heard it called. I want you to go experience some of these magical places for yourself. This book is filled with some of my fantastic stories, useful road wisdom, some of the do's and don'ts, marvelously different cultures, and the incredible food that will hopefully inspire you to do what I did. I hope to light that little spark that gets you up off your butt and helps you follow your dreams, wherever they may lead you. You've never really failed until you're dead, so it's not too late, and it's easier than you think. Just build up a little war chest of cash, figure out what to do with all your stuff, then jump in with both feet and let the current take you on a wild ride. Look, I'm an idiot, and if I can do it, so can you.